Well, first of all, you have to understand it's two words. One's anti and one's Christ. Most people using the term antichrist have no comprehension at all what the word Christ means and where did it come from. And so people say, well, Christ was the Messiah. No, actually, the word Christ simply means oil. But to have an antichrist, we think of anti meaning against Christ. Something which, in our language today, we say somebody's anti. That means he's against something. But that's not what the word in Greek means. Ask anybody who understands the Greek language. They'll tell you the word anti does not mean to be against anything. So when you say something or somebody was antichrist, well, he's against Christ. No. Anti in Greek means to actually be the Christ. They are not saying they're against somebody being Christ. They want to be Christ. So it's actually they want to be in the place of someone else. So if you're saying you're anti, Christ, it means you're not against Christ. You want to be Christ. So it's not against, but you want to be the Christ yourself. And so I can understand I don't have any problem with using the term Napoleon was an antichrist or Hitler was an antichrist. If you understand it correctly, what the word Christ means, it means a Messiah or one who is anointed for power. And that Hitler wanted to be anointed for power himself. You don't want to give it to Christ. He wants it. So, okay, well then it doesn't mean Hitler's against Jesus. It means he wants to be Jesus. He wants to be the Christ. So in that way, I understand, okay, that word makes sense. That Hitler would be an antichrist, not the. Because today, all over the world, all men seem to want to be an anti in the original Greek use of the word, not Latin. Everybody seems to want to be what somebody else is. Everybody wants to be a Steven Spielberg. Well, there's only one of him, so you're not going to be him. Well, we want to be like Muhammad Ali. Well, yeah, but the whole human race wants to be like somebody else. And so, well, that's anti in the original ancient Greek. Doesn't mean you're against Muhammad Ali. It means you want to be like him. So that's what the word antichrist simply means. Somebody who wants to be like Christ. He wants to be the Christ. And so that, it doesn't mean you're against anything. It just means you want to be instead of the one that is, you want to be. Somebody who wants to be the ultimate power in the universe and sees himself as the ultimate power in all the universe, and therefore we could say he was an antichrist in the ancient Greek setting, not in the Latin, because anti today just simply means to be against. No, this mentally deranged moron who thinks that he is God, he's not against God, he's saying he is God. He wants to be the gods. Well, then he is an anti-God. He's an anti-Christ. He wants to be Christ. So, when you're using the word anti-Christ, just understand what it means. That's all. Do your homework and see what the word actually implies. Rome took so much of the religion and so much of the accoutrements of power and governmental superstructure and philosophies and ideas and old belief systems and interwove them into the Roman pantheon of gods and the Roman government, into the Roman way of philosophy and law, etc. And so it inherited a lot from the ancient Greeks and the Grecian Empire. And so much of Rome was probably actually inhabited by the old Greeks And when their empire started collapsing, they moved forward. They moved elsewhere and ended up in what we call today Europe. They ended up in Europe trying to get away from the fall of the Grecian Empire. And today we see so many Italians who are actually of Greek ancestry. So Rome took a lot from the ancient Greeks. You can bet on that. And but again, you just have to understand that the world of mankind did not appear out of nowhere. Everything has had to come from something else. So when you see a religion like the Roman universal religion, the religion that Rome promoted around its whole empire, the entire empire of the Roman Empire, was the religion of Caesar was being promoted throughout the whole of the empire, all through the Mediterranean, down into Egypt, etc. The world of that time, and that was massive, the world of that time under the Roman Empire. And so there was a religion being promoted under the authorship of Rome. And so it was called the Roman Universal Religion. The universe, as much as humans knew about then, back in the Roman Empire, it was the whole universe to them. No, we look at it as, no, it's not the whole universe, but it was a very great empire at one time, and Caesar's religion was being promoted over the whole of the empire. So we had something, I guess you would call it, a Roman universal religion. Well, universal in Latin is the word Catholic. So we say today that it was a Roman Catholic religion. Catholic simply means universal. So therefore air is Catholic because it's everywhere. Water is Catholic. Why? Because it's everywhere. It's universal. Stupidity is Catholic. Why? Because it's everywhere. Stars are Catholic. Why? Because they're everywhere. Go out at night and everywhere you look is a star. So anything which is everywhere, all over, is Catholic. That's a word that is used as not the name of a church. It's a word in Latin which means universal. It's big. It's all over the world. And so people, the human race, is Catholic, period. Why? Because there's people everywhere. Doesn't mean they belong to a particular church. No, the word in Latin simply means people are everywhere. Anything that's everywhere is all over, is referred to as Catholic. So today we have the Roman Catholic religion, which is the religion of the ancient Roman Empire based on the ancient Grecian Empire, which had based itself on the great empires of the Middle East and India and Asia Minor, it's an extraordinary story of the evolution of mankind as it begins to grow and mature and begins to reach out into the rest of the world and take its religions, its customs, it's all of its natural abilities, and they move out into the world. And today we have a world filled with people from all over the earth. But this is what happened thousands of years ago, and these people all had their different religions, different belief systems, and their words all basically, were in their customs, so people understood what it was saying. But today we use the words, and we don't even begin to realize what these words actually mean. And if we did, we wouldn't use them. The French Empire, and it's all over the world too. Yeah, and as I said, the Vatican was founded back in the year 325 AD, back in the 4th century, and the Roman Empire has, I said this a couple of weeks ago, the Roman Empire has actually dominated the world and dominated Europe especially. For, over 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire, dominated Europe. Well, over 2,000 years ago, Europe has dominated the world. So all roads lead to Rome. Rome has been dominating Europe and the Middle East for about 2,500 years. And so, and it's been dominating Europe for 2,500 years. Well, yeah, but Europe has dominated the earth for 2,500 years. And so the bottom line is that Europe is now pretty much dominated the globe. All the major European countries of Europe all have their subsidiary operations all over the earth. The French are in Africa, they're in Asia, the British are in Asia, Africa, and in Egypt. The Germans, my God, they're everywhere. The Americans. So these ancient cultures all go back to Rome, to the Roman Empire. Rome perfected the establishment of the institutions of mankind that are necessary to control the man and woman and child on the earth. They were brilliant when they put together the institutions that would promote their philosophy and their control of the world, and do it in such a way that no one seemed to realize what was really going on. Today we have educational institutions, universities and colleges, never ever realizing the very word college comes from the collegia in Italy, in Rome. And it's called the Collegia, or the College of Cardinals. So when you go to college, that's a Latin Roman Catholic term. College. I don't care what college. It's Roman. And it's run like Rome. And so when you look at the words and terms, when you go to college, you start off and you're a sophomore. Well, in the ancient world, the word sophomore meant you were an idiot. You were totally mentally deranged, goofy idiot that didn't know how to find your way out of a paper bag. So that anything that's really screwy and stupid today, we call sophomoric, meaning this is stuff what sophomores talk about. Sophomore means you're stupid. And then later on, you have something called a freshman. Oh, there, you're a freshman in school. Yeah, you're a fresh man. And you're a sophomore. You're ignorant and stupid. And so we're going to teach you what to kiss and when. And we're going to teach you how to operate in this world. And we will give you a diploma. If you answer all the questions correctly, then you get a diploma, which is a work permit. And now you can go out and earn a living with a work permit. But it comes from the word collegia, college, university. And so all the most important universities around the world are either owned by or run by Jesuits or some division of the Roman system of ancient Rome. So this is why I say that I don't think the world is able to extricate itself out of the mess we're in, because so many people just do not realize the size and the implications of how big this apparatus really is. It goes back thousands of years, and you think all the things that were going on 5,000 years ago was just a bunch of primitive goofballs doing whatever they call themselves doing. No, they were perfecting the whole idea of perfecting how to control the human race. And when it came to the founding of the Roman Empire, they had some incredibly fascinating ideas about how to impact the human. As a matter of fact, it was Albert Pike, the head of the Masonic order, the highest ranking Freemason, wrote a book. But I just recall that in the first couple of pages, he talked about if you're going to control the whole world, it's impossible to do because there's too many different kinds of people, too many different ideas, and you're never going to be able to force the whole human race to do anything because you just don't have an army big enough. But he said, but look at the world as one thing, one man, one woman, and one child. That's the way you got to look at the entire earth of mankind. One man, one woman, and one child. So what is it that you need to do to capture the minds and the hearts of one man? And so it explains how you work on the human mind. And therefore, if you could get one man buying into something, use the same method to get the whole male population of the world to buy into it. Because all men are men. So learn how to control one man and you've got the whole world. Learn how to control one woman, her thinking, her body, the way she feels about things, the way she views things. Learn how to control her, one woman, and now you've got all the women in the world. And so this goes all the way back to the professional politicians and the founding of America, wanting to get away from all of that. And most people are not aware that when the United States of America as a republic was originally founded, two institutions were not allowed in this country. Go back and read the encyclopedias about the founding of America, and you will find there were two separate institutions that the founding fathers of America said would not and could not exist in this country under any circumstances. One was the Vatican. And the Catholic Church, period, was not allowed to have any sway in this country whatsoever. And the other was the banking institutions of Europe and of the Roman Empire. And so today, that's all we have are banks in the church everywhere. And all the different churches, even including the York Rite cults like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and Seventh-day Adventists, Christadelphians, Worldwide Church of God, all of the different York Rite cults today in America and in Europe are all based on the ancient Roman canon laws, ancient Roman maritime admiralty laws, all of the secret contracts and things which have been signed. And so it's a very, very big and dark and old and ancient story that if we're, that's why I say all the time that I don't think it's possible to change the destiny of the human race now. My feeling is, and it's actually my feeling, and it's just my feeling, it's my understanding. I don't think anything is going to change for us on the earth unless and until there is some kind of an intervention in our affairs by a higher power. I would prefer to think that would be God who would intervene in our, intervene in our normal destiny as a human family. Well, we read in the Bible sometimes in the past, we're told that God intervened in our business here on the earth and created a worldwide flood and killed everybody. I would not be a bit surprised if the gods themselves, the great spirits who have overseen our creation and who are watching our destiny unfold, that they are going to do something to clean up the direction and the destiny of the whole entire human family, because we have become so far out of line. We're so totally corrupt in all of our thinking. So I'm afraid that for the human family, we are going to have to experience something very, very bad before the Spirit that created us can recreate us and start us back on a different road. Because if not, if we're left alone now, I don't know how we're going to make it to the next century. I don't know how we're going to make it to the next 10 years. We will not learn by listening to an older and like they used to do thousands of years ago, the older men of the community, with the long beards, and they were the older men, and they were told, and the people were told to listen to their old fathers and all the older older tribal members. They were young at one time, and they now know things that we young people don't know, and so we need to listen to their wisdom. Well, nobody's listening to anybody anymore, except the ignorant people who are listening to the silly nonsense on television. We call television evangelists. But keep in mind one thing, too, about the Bible that's important for people to know, is the book of Revelation was not allowed to be in the Bible. It started off not in the Bible. And then later on, some group decided that the book of Revelation is really important to the whole story of the Bible. So they insisted on putting the book of Revelation in. And then you will see, if you go through the history of the Bible and the development of the scriptures, then you will see, no, later on there was another group that said, no, we said take it out and leave it out. So they pulled it out again. And then later on, maybe 50 to 100 years later, some group found out the book of Revelation is so important, so they put it back in. So it's been about a dozen times it's been taken out of the Bible and put back in, and taken out of the Bible and put back in. And why? Because basically the book of Revelation has nothing to do with early Christianity. It had no part in early Christianity whatsoever. And so many things about the book of Revelation Christians have not been told. And if you were told, it would shock you, some of the stuff about the book of Revelation that we know the history of. And so today we're stuck with, the book of Revelation is back in the Bible again. And many of the church fathers said they have nothing to do with that book. It's all astrology and have nothing to do with the book of Revelation because it has nothing to do with Christianity. Well, it's still there today, and people are still looking at it and making movies and television shows and preaching on the book of Revelation, never realizing it's a old ancient book dealing with astrology. The whole entire book of Revelation is an astrological book about ancient and very ancient astrological thinking. And so go back and read it with keeping in mind that this is a book on astrology, and then it will all begin to make sense. The story about the Queen of Heaven, and she's standing on the moon. She's standing on the surface of the moon, the Queen of Heaven. Queen of Heaven is nothing more than Isis, the astrological symbol in Egypt for Virgo, the Virgin. Virgo, the Virgin, is one of the 12 signs of the zodiac, the Virgin. And so today, one of the 12 signs in the zodiac today is Virgo, Virgo the Virgin. So she is referred to as the Virgin. Well, what do we talk about in the Catholic Church but Jesus and his mother, the Virgin? And the Pope is always bowing down and kissing the statue of Mary, the Virgin. Not Mary, M-A-R-Y. No, Mari, M-A-R-I, not M-A-R-Y. Look it up in a dictionary, a Bible encyclopedia, M-A-R-I. The book of Revelation is very important if you understand that it is not part of the original, what the church fathers around, first and second century, the very beginnings of Christianity, they did not accept the book of Revelation, though it was there. They just didn't accept it as part of the canon scripture. Well, not only that, but then we have something today where we know there's about 13 to 15 other books that were written, that were prophecies, that in the Bible itself mentions those books. And that's on my research society. I've got that information on where in the Bible, Old and New Testament, talks about important books of prophecy. And it gives the names of those books of important prophecy in the Bible. but those important books of prophecy are not in the Bible. They're merely spoken about in the Bible by certain books will tell you, but this, there was a book called this, and that was a very important book you need to know about. Well, go look for that book in the Bible. It doesn't exist. And so I think there's about 15 different books talked about in the Bible that were very important prophecies in those books, but they're not in the Bible. And they're left out purposely. And so you wonder, well, why are they leaving them out? If the Bible says they were important, why don't you leave them in? Well, the church fathers decided that there were some of those books didn't say things that the people would understand, so they figured we'll decide what the people will understand and what they won't. And so they left certain books out of the Bible, about 15 or 16 of them, out of the Bible and didn't put them in at all. But I think the Book of Revelation is very interesting, but it is an astrological work. It's based on astrology. And in the Book of Revelation, one of the most important pieces in the Book of Revelation for me is the last page of the Book of Revelation, which is 22:16, I think it is. The very last page of the Book of Revelation. It has Jesus saying, it quotes and says, I, Jesus, I am Lucifer. I am the bright morning star that the Bible calls Lucifer. So in the Book of Revelation, go to the very last chapter, 22, and look at verse 16, where Jesus is saying, I am, and he says, I, Jesus, I am saying, and then he says, I am Lucifer. So today when you hear people talking about Lucifer's the devil, and he's the demon, the devil in the abyss, etc., no, unfortunately, you don't understand that Lucifer was a planet Venus. Venus was the first time we come in contact with the word Lucifer. It was because of Jerome. Jerome was a Catholic scholar back when the Catholic Vulgate Bible was being translated from the earlier language, from the earlier Greek and Aramaic and Hebrew languages into Latin, so that that Rome could see the scriptures. And so the Catholic translator named Saint Jerome, he came across a word in Hebrew which he just translated the best he could, but he made a mistake. It wasn't a big mistake, but it was an error, and it was picked up and made into a bigger mistake by the church. And now today, the mistake is all over the world. He came across Saint Jerome, when he was translating the Bible, came across in the book of Isaiah. Venus was referred to as the light bringer. So if we're all in a big room, like a motion picture theater, and the lights go off and everything's off and it's dark, if somebody comes into the room, into that theater with a big light, a big flashlight or a big lantern that's lighting up everything, we call him Lucifer, because the name Lucifer means one who brings the light. He's not the light, but he brings the light. And so the planet Venus was referred to in Hebrew as Helio, or the light bringer, the one who brings the light. Why? It's because in the morning, in the ancient world, and especially in Egypt, the priest of Ra, Amun-Ra, the sun god, the priest would wake in the morning very early, and they would go out in front of the temple, and they would all sit and wait and watch for Lucifer, the light bringer, to come, which was the planet Venus. Why? Because Venus is very impressive. In the morning, when it's first coming up, it's very bright, and it's really interesting. Something that bright coming up on the horizon. But it told everybody, and today it tells everyone, It's bringing the light. What are you talking about, bringing the light? The sun. The sun is the light of the world. That's why we say Jesus is light of the world. Of course, the sun is the light of the world. But Venus is not lighting the world, but Venus is telling you he's coming behind me. So when you see Venus, know the sun is coming now. Now the light of the world is going to rise, and he's going to be our risen Savior. So the ancient peoples in India and Egypt, etc., in the ancient world, all realized when that bright, beautiful, bright star, that bright planet called Venus, when you see that thing coming up on the horizon, it's not the light of the world. It's not going to light the whole earth. But it is telling you, get ready, the light is coming. He's bringing the light to the world. Why? Because he just precedes the coming of the sun. And so we call Jesus, God's Son, the light of the world. Yeah, well, who owns the sun? Well, nobody owns the sun. Well, somebody must own it. Well, if anybody owned it, theoretically, I guess you could say God owns it. Okay, so it's God's Son. And God's Son is our risen Savior. That's right, because it rises every morning. If it don't, we're dead in 3 weeks. And so the Venus was the light bringer, the one who announced the coming of God's Son, the light of the world. So today we say that Venus is the light bringer. He brings the light. And so Jesus said, I am the light of the world. I'm the one that lights the world. So Jesus is the light bringer, because through Jesus we are enlightened about God, about the universe, about our lives. We're supposedly to worship God's Son, the light of the world. And if you're looking to God's Son to learn from him, then you are his pupil, which is a term we use for the round circle of your eye as a pupil. So you're learning from God's Son. You're taking in intellectual and spiritual enlightenment from the Son. And so Jesus is the Son, and he is the one who brings the light. So it was a misunderstanding of astrological terms because the writers of the King James Bible, translators, were very, very good with the King's English, but they weren't that hot on Aramaic and Greek. And so sometimes they made mistakes and said things that weren't exactly correct. And so they misunderstood the word Helio and translated it Lucifer, when it should be just a bright star. Anything bright star that heralds the coming of the sun, the light of the world, is called Lucifer, one who is not the light, but he's bringing the light to you. After Raiders of the Lost Ark, the next one was the hunt for what was it called? The Last Crusade. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And what was the Last Crusade? Well, the Last Crusade was for the cup of Christ, for the Holy Grail, for the Holy Cup that Jesus was supposed to have drank from in the Last Supper. Well, the Last Supper is a metaphor. There was no Last Supper. It has nothing to do with people eating and drinking together in a supper. It has to do with the Jewish symbol of the Passover meal. That's a whole story we could get into if we haven't, but not now. So in the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, he's looking for the cup of Christ, the cup of the Grail. And so we read in the Bible, today you can read in the Bible a point where Jesus says in the New Testament, he said, upon this rock I will build my church. Now this is important because it's in the New Testament and it's supposedly Jesus saying this. And Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And so the Catholic Church, the Roman Church said, oh, upon this rock, well, a rock in the ancient Greek was Petra, P-E-T-R-A. Petra is a rock in the ancient Greek language. In the ancient world, Petra was a rock. And so the Catholic translators, they said, oh, well, it was misspelled. See, it's spelled here in the old ancient document, Petra, Petra, but actually it was misspelled. It was Peter, Peter. And so Peter was the rock upon which Jesus is going to build his church. And so they will tell you, well, the word Peter actually, I guess, comes from Petra, in one way or another. It comes from Petra because Peter was like a rock. You know, he was just a big, strong guy, and he was just like a rock. And whatever he did, it was just like a big, thunderous rock. And so that's what we call Peter Petra. No, no, and no. When Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church, go back and look at the word rock in the encyclopedias and dictionaries of the Bible, and you will see the word rock is a word Petra, Petra. Petra is a stone rock, a huge mountainous rock, and I do mean huge mountainous rock in the country of Jordan. If it wasn't at war, so much bloodshed going on in the Middle East right now, if you had the time and the money, you could go to the country of Jordan and take a tour, and they will take you out to this enormous rock that you have to go through these canyons to get to. And when you come to it, it's a huge cathedral, a beautiful cathedral temple to an ancient gods in the country of Jordan. And that big temple out in the middle of nowhere, carved out of a huge mountain, is called Petra. Why? Because Petra is a stone. And the temple is one solid piece of stone that's chipped away and made into a beautiful temple. It's extraordinary. Well, in the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and his father, Sean Connery, if you remember, if you saw the movie, they're looking for the lost, the cup of the Grail, and it takes them to Petra in the country of Jordan. And they go through the canyons, getting to this enormous temple that anybody can go to today if you're a tourist. And it's called Petra because it's a one big rock. Well, an important point here is that Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church. And the rock is translated Petra, not Peter, Peter, Peter. No, Petra, P-A-T-R-A, Petra, P-E-T-R-A. And so what I'm saying is that now we see that the real story of Christianity, Jesus said, is based on Petra, that stone mountain that's carved into an incredibly beautiful temple in the country of Jordan. Jesus says in the Bible, that's the basis for my church, period. My church I am basing on Petra. So you better go back and look at the country of Jordan, and then look at Petra, the great temple that was carved out of the mountain of stone. Upon this rock I will build my church. Well, that's exactly what it is. And so when Indiana Jones and his father, Sean Connery, they go inside the great temple of Petra, and what do they find but one of the Knights Templars? One of the Knights Templars and the Knights of St. John, and he's kneeling before an altar with all of these different candles and holy things all on the altar, and he is protecting, he's standing guard over the very foundations of Christ and the Christian religion, is in Petra, the carved temple out of a rock. And so if you really are interested in Christianity, you might want to forget all of this nonsensical stuff you've heard out of Hollywood and out of the churches, and go back and read the scripture, and it says, upon this rock I will build my church, signed Jesus. Now I'll go back and look at Petra in the country of Jordan, and you will find that there's a whole new story based on what we today believe is called Christianity. No, Christianity is a dark and profound understanding of that great temple in the country of Jordan called Petra, and who built it, and why did they build it the way they did. And that's the foundation of real Christianity, is in Petra, in the country of Jordan. It has got nothing to do with Manly P. Hall was not only a personal friend of mine that I used to go to his home, but when he passed away, in his will, I was called by Obadiah Harris, who was at that time the president and chairman of the board of the Manly P. Hall Philosophical Research Society. It's a big university in Los Angeles on Los Feliz Street. And I got a phone call. I was working at the Truth Seeker Company in San Diego, and Obadiah said, "Jordan, Mr. Hall left a will, and you are in it, and he has left you something very valuable, and he wanted you to have it." And I said, "Obadiah, what did he leave me?" He said, "I'm not going to tell you. You just come up here and you'll see it." So I immediately got in my car that day and drove up to Los Angeles from San Diego, and went over, because I've been to Mr. Hall's library hundreds of times just over the years. I've been there and used to go there on Sundays and hear Mr. Hall's lectures and talks. I was fascinated by the brilliance. This is what I've been looking for all my life. Somebody who had the answers. Somebody who knew what the words meant and broke down the etymology of the concepts of where these ideas have come from. Well, that was the tremendous work Mr. Hall had done. And so when I got there to find out what he had left me, in his will, Mr. Hall left me all of his research volumes. They were his research journals. And there was, I don't even know, maybe 150 of them, beautiful journals with all of his research in them. And going all the way back to 1936 to the day he passed. And he left it all personal present to me. And so that shocked me. I was actually rather taken back. I was shocked that such a phenomenal treasure Mr. Hall would personally leave to me in his will. And so I not only knew Mr. Hall personally, I used to, as a matter of fact, just a few months before he passed away, I gave him an award. I was part of an organization called US of A, United Sensitives of America. And I was on the governing body of the organization, and it was a large group of different, what we call sensitives, psychics, researchers, historians, numerologists, all kinds of interesting people, some of them writers for television, etc., on esoteric and occult subjects. And I was on the board of directors with that organization. And so we had every year we would have a big we'd have not a fundraiser, but we'd have a big award dinner where we would give awards to certain people who have done, very big things for the human family, teachers and lecturers and researchers, etc. And so, I suggested Mr. Hall, and we did give him an award, and he was there that night. And I was so absolutely delighted I was able to introduce Mr. Hall, my dear friend, and not knowing that he was leaving me all his research journals and the will. But yes, I knew Mr. Hall, and he was an incredibly brilliant man. I do believe, and it's just my personal belief, that Mr. Hall was probably one of the most incredible spiritual minds that has ever visited our earth. This man could speak for hours upon hours on all the intricacies of religion, theologies, concepts, and belief systems, of where they came from and what they meant and how to understand them in relation to today's world. And my God, he must have written 50 or 60 books and hundreds of articles and given thousands of lectures quite literally around the world and through his own college and university. The man was an astoundingly brilliant, in theories and understanding religions and government and historians. There's no one like him. There's never been anyone like him.
Right.
And we talk about the great philosophers of the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans and all of that. But as far as I'm concerned, there's nobody came close to Mr. Manly P. Hall, who was a brilliant and wonderful and dear man, and he was a dear friend of mine. And so I'm just amazed that I even got to know him. But he was the answer a long time ago to, I knew that there was information out there in the world, and I wanted it so bad. As the scripture says, knock and it will be open, and seek and you will find. Ask and it will be given. Well, I was seeking and knocking and going to every church I could, every group, every research society, wherever I could go to hear speakers explain to me the world I live in. Nobody ever accomplished that. Nobody ever knew enough to tell me anything. So I was just wasting my young years going to churches where nobody knew what they were doing. Nobody had the faintest idea about what I'm talking about, until I met Mr. Hall, who that's all he did was explain the world to you. Everything, where all the religions have come from, where all the philosophies came from, what they meant, what the words meant, the etymology of the terms. It was such an extraordinary experience. And from there, that was in my 18, 19-year-old. And then from there, I began to go deeply. Now that I know the basics, now I know what's going on here. And I understand the lies and the deception that the world believes because they don't know. This is why I feel like I said before, if you go to a church today, people will ask you, oh, are you a believer? Yes, I'm a believer. And so, oh, well, how long have you been a believer? And so they have books in church libraries and church bookstores called, with the term believer in it. A lot of the books are called Believers' House of Faith or Believers this or Believers that. It implies you believe something, which implies you don't know anything, but you believe something. I don't want to believe. I have been too often I have been misled. Why? Because I didn't know. And I thought that these people who were older than me, they have white and gray hair, and I assumed they were the teachers. I listened to them, and then I would ask them questions, and then they would look at me as a child like a deer in the headlights of a car. They had no idea what I'm talking about. Right. And so therefore, like Albert Einstein said one time in one of his books, he said the teachers used to tell us that we had to answer their questions. But I asked, how come you can't answer our questions? And that's what I felt. I have questions that the teachers of religion couldn't answer. Why? Because they're too simple-minded. Just a child would think of them. And I would I just ask a question, and the priest would look at me like I'm a fool. I got 3 heads because he didn't know how to answer the question. I would ask my parents. I would ask people all around me, adults. Nobody seemed to know what they were doing. And so therefore I pretty much assumed that grown-ups are just grown up in body, but in their minds, they're still children. They don't know anything. I want to know. I want to prove it. I want somebody to show me what it is that's happening and prove it to me so I can understand it correctly. If you've ever been to the Philosophical Research Society, which is a university type school that Mr. Hall set up, and he had his own personal library, which was a two-story high, walls and walls and walls of reference books from all over the world on every subject you can imagine. But that was the public side of his personal library. He allowed the public to see. But if you go behind the scenes, he had another library at PRS that nobody gets to see. And it was his personal library, which is, again, filled with walls of massive volumes. And there was I couldn't think of a subject that asked him that he could not sit down for 90 minutes to 2 hours and explain it in minute detail and show you exactly where things have come from, exactly what the words meant in the ancient Roman Empire as opposed to the Babylonian Empire, and what these words and terms and ideas and phrases that you hear today in religions, where they actually came from, and they don't mean what you thought they did. And boy, when I started waking up to the fact that, man, there has been a world of knowledge hidden from the human family. My God, how much that you don't know, that you've never been told, that is overwhelming and obvious when somebody finally shows it to you. They finally sit you down and say, are you ready to hear the real truth? Fine. Here's where it really came from. Unfortunately, many thousands and thousands of years ago, mankind began searching the heavens for wisdom and knowledge. And like Mr. Hall said, they weren't looking to learn about, they were looking into the heavens to learn from the stars. They were looking at the stars and the constellations and the sun and the moon and trying to figure out where did these things come from. And that was the beginnings. And then for thousands of years, mankind has only been a handful, not all of mankind. The overwhelming majority of mankind are still on skateboards and watching Beavis and Butthead. But there has been always in the history of mankind, there have always been those who were born into this world to become geniuses, to become brilliant minds, because they study. When everybody else is out drinking and partying, they are researching and studying into the late hours of night and the early mornings. They're in universities reading, studying, calculating, understanding the words, the terms, where things have come from. And they become our great teachers, of which 90% of the people will never hear anything about, because nobody seems to care about that kind of wisdom and knowledge. And so I realized that a long time ago, and boy, do I realize it now, that I have spent my entire life studying in university libraries on my own, just sitting and reading and reading and reading and cross-referencing and pollinating ideas and concepts with something that was said, 5,000 years ago by the Babylonians. Is now today we're saying the same identical thing, but we just don't know it. And so I've decided that the world of mankind is totally ill-informed and unread about the real history of the world that you live in. The history of this earth itself is staggering if you have the intellectual acumen to understand the perimeters of our history. We have artifacts which are known to be handmade artifacts, which are found in the earth in such a depth in the earth that all the paleontologists and archaeologists all agree that at that depth, that far down into the earth, the strata is at least 3 to 3.5 billion with a B 3.5 billion years old strata going way down into the earth as further as we can go. You're digging into the earth that's 3.5 billion years old, and yet we're finding handmade artifacts, strange and profoundly brilliant stuff. We're bringing up all kinds of handmade metals and rings and jewelry, and some of it having writings that we don't even relate to. And so it implies that there has been an intelligent people or intelligent life. I don't know what they were 3 billion years ago, but somebody was here 3 billion years ago, because the handmade artifacts are now on display, which were dug out of strata, which is 3.5 billion years old. So try and wrap your head around that. Try and wrap your mind around that. That life on this earth, intelligent life, and I do mean extraordinarily intelligent life, has been on this earth for 3.5 billion years ago. 3.5 billion years ago, there was highly intelligent creatures on this earth. I don't know if they look like us, but I do know that according to the science of today, we are now finding handmade artifacts in the oceans or beneath the oceans. When they're drilling for oil, they hit the bottom of the ocean and they drill into the bottom, they drill into the floor of the ocean. And as they're pumping it up, as the stuff comes up, they're finding handmade artifacts which are under the ocean floor. We have pyramids the size of the Great Pyramid of Egypt on the Atlantic Ocean floor, 10 miles north of the island of Bimini, in an area called the Bahama Banks, is an enormous pyramid sitting on the ocean floor. And how many people know that? And better still, how many people even care? You better care, because there's something going on this earth that we haven't been told. And the reason why is because the people who are given this knowledge and know about it and are looking at this kind of esoteric knowledge, it's a big club and you ain't in it. Right. And this is what George Carlin was talking about, when you find out how much you have not been told because your masters who believe that they own you. They have actually framed mischief by law. They have actually created laws among themselves. And those laws that they created say that they own all the poor working class people of the world. They own your body, and they put you on their stock market. And so the people who run this planet are not about to tell you nothing. They don't figure you're smart enough to understand it, and you're just getting in the way anyway, because with your IQ, you wouldn't understand it anyway, and that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to crawl on your knees and pay your rent and go out and enjoy your beer and your pretzels and your ball games and your football and your tennis ball games, and go out and play games with a ball and stay out of the way of the people who run this planet. Don't ever think that the President of the United States is the most powerful man in this country. He is not. He merely represents. He's a president of a company. He's not the owner of the company. Right. You better go back and find out where your country came from and who was running this planet behind your back, that is keeping you ignorant, ill-informed, and unread, so that they can easily manipulate you into doing whatever they want you to do. So you're only good for one thing. If they need you in a war, they need some warm bodies to send over in a war. Good. War is good for business, so you need to invest your son. So I'm just saying that if you wake up and find out that the world you live in is not being created by the God you thought was around you, and thought that God loves you, and then you find out you don't even know what the word God means. Yeah. And when you look at this word Sirius, the dog star, first of all, this is where we get our word sir. So in the military, and when I was growing up in the South, I always learn to, when talking to adults, with yes ma'am and yes sir. Sir, S-I-R, comes from Sirius. So therefore the pharaohs of Egypt were said to have come from Sirius. Yes sir, no sir, military. And so there is a whole militaristic presence on the earth, which I have talked about before, where all the armies of the world always march the same. The goose step is the same with the Nazis or with all the other countries of the world. All the nations of the world have armies, navies. They have the merchant marines. They all salute the same way. They all wear same insignias. All the militaries of the world operate the same behind the scenes. My God, you need to wake up and find out your world is run by people you have no idea in the world who really is the power of America behind the scenes. Just as we look at the Roman Empire, we see Caesar and we hear about the great Caesars of Rome, never realizing the Caesars were not the boss in Rome. The money is the boss in Rome. Right. The people with the money decided what the Caesar will do and what he won't do. The bankers. And now you're talking about behind the Caesars of Rome. You're talking about Arius Copernicus Pisos. P-I-C-O-S. Look it up for a change and realize Caesar merely was on his knees to his monetary masters. The Pisos people and the Flavians. And when you begin to see the real powers behind the Roman Empire were banking, demonic depravity banking families. And my God, when you understand how this earth is actually run and who owns it and how they control it and then how your government works. And you got two parties, Democrats and Republicans in America. And we call them left wing and right wing. Why do we call the two parties left wing and right wing? That's because an eagle only has two wings. That's why the American eagle, the bald eagle's on the American $1 bill. If you look on the back of a $1 bill, you'll see an eagle with two wings, left wing and right wing. And you will see he has 9 tail feathers, which is the Council of 9. Most people have never heard of the Council of 9, but you better go back and start doing some homework and find out the secret societies that founded this country and that financed this country's wars throughout the world and who they really are and what you are doing here. Because you don't know you have no idea in the world where this world has come from, where it is now, and get ready because it's going to go where it was already designed to go. So it's an incredible story of betrayal of the human family. 325 AD was the official year of the founding of the Roman Catholic Church. 325 AD is when the Vatican and the powers that be of Europe that was still under the Roman law, still under the Rome, but Rome had fallen back in the 5th century. And so for a while there was nothing but chaos in Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire. But about 325 AD was the official founding of the Roman Catholic Church and the founding of the Vatican as the center for the worship of the Roman Catholic Church. And so all the Roman Catholic Church was just picking up the pieces from behind the scenes by the international banking cartels who owned and ran the Roman Empire. As I said, Caesar didn't run anything. Caesar merely represented the government of Rome. And he was like he wanted to make himself emperor of Rome. Well, that didn't work. And so, but the people who were financing the Roman Empire behind the scenes, that was a couple of different families, that there are some incredibly ancient and very powerful empires that have existed in the so-called Asian world, and some of it has bled over into the Western world, and great wars have been fought because of this. Again, I would go back to, because I'm not the world's foremost authority on anything, and I've said that so many times. But if you go back and listen to, and go on the web to YouTube and listen to Joseph Farrell, Farrell. Joseph Farrell is an extraordinary, brilliant mind talking about those ancient cultures and their empires and how they impact the world events today. And Peter Levenda, Levenda, Peter Levenda also, another extraordinary mind talking about that very subject, about the ancient peoples of the East and their empires and how they impacted and caused the Western empires, the white man, so to speak, to do what we're doing, to do what they're doing today with the earth. I know Peter Levenda, and I've met him, and Joseph Farrell and I talk on many occasions. I will call him or he'll call me, and we try and maybe connect at least once a month and chat for a few minutes about the latest stuff that he's working on. I just think it's an extraordinary well of information, Peter Levenda and Joseph Farrell. I don't have words to express my admiration for both of those guys, because they are both extraordinarily wise and brilliant people. So the world we live in is very, very strange. I do believe that there are other scriptures, especially in the Hindu and in the northern India, in the mountains of Tibet. I am totally sure that there are scriptures out there by the thousands that have not been translated yet, that are astoundingly incredible stuff that will blow your mind if you knew what was out there in those monasteries in what we call Tibet. There are thousands of manuscripts that are being translated today, little by little, slowly but surely. And the things which are said in those manuscripts go back, just God knows how many thousands of years ago. But somebody knew what was really going on in the universe, in the whole entire universe, not just our Milky Way galaxy, but in the whole of the subject of where life has come from, who controls the living entities of this universe that we live in. Somebody has known this for a long time, and they wrote many, many thousands of years ago in scriptures that we today are just now beginning to penetrate and find incredible knowledge that we didn't know existed before. And so that, I'm sure, is going to change the whole complexion of the whole human family in the years to come, as we begin to look at those scriptures and begin to, for the first time, to read them and understand what they're saying to us, because some of them are 10,000 years old, but beautifully written. If you see the handwriting and the incredible handwriting of these scriptures, and where they've come from and how old they really are and what they're talking about, it's a mind trip just looking at ancient scriptures. So the Bible is not the only scripture that you need to know about. There's a lot more out there that we're not being told about. And the reason why, as I said to you before, George Carlin said it best, that the people who are collecting this knowledge, who know about it, who study it, who are experts on it, it's a big club and you're not in it. So the people who run this planet assume that you're not smart enough to deal with this kind of knowledge, and they don't want you getting in their way. You just go out and watch your silly basketball games and all your silly childish little ball games that you children love to play. And, that's what, and I said that before, animals love to play with balls. Give a cat or a dog a ball, They'll play with it all day long, and they get all the other cats in the neighborhood, and they're all playing ball. And so that's what our masters who own us, the people who think that they own the planet, they see us as just a bunch of animals. And so they give us ball games. They give us all kinds of ball games. I don't know of any sport today in the Western world that isn't based on a ball, from golf to pool and bowling ball and football and basketball and tennis ball and soccer ball and God knows, pinball. And so it's all based on a ball. Why? Because they want you to go play with a ball. You know, like I told you many years ago, when my dad, my family, my mom and my dad would have families coming over for dinner or whatever, come to visit. And after dinner, the women would all end up out in the back porch or in the kitchen talking, and the men would all go in the front room. And my dad would always say, "You kids go out and play." So all of the kids, we were to go out and play ball. Go out and play ball. And I told my dad a couple of times, "I don't want to go play ball. I want to know what you guys are talking about. Because I know you think I'm stupid, but I'm not stupid. And I know that you want me out there playing ball because you want to talk about something that you don't figure I need to hear." Well, I got news for you. I'm not stupid. I want to hear what you guys are really talking about. And since it doesn't have anything to do, my curiosity has got nothing to do with what my mom's talking to her girlfriends about. I want to know what you guys are talking about, because that's what I am too. Why? Is because the President of the United States at that time was a lot of things, but stupid wasn't one of them.
At that time.
And right. He knew what I know. He knew that Manly Palmer Hall was a profoundly important spiritual presence on the earth. This man did not advocate any particular religion, did not promote any particular philosophy, was not affiliated with any particular group at all. He was a man of wisdom that had studied the world, period. All of the different religions of the world he was an expert on. And today, he is even accepted today as one of the world's foremost experts on all the religions and cults and secret societies and all the esoteric theology of the world. This man was an expert's expert, a teacher of the teachers. And he was my dear friend. And I spent many hours with him. And it was a wonderful experience being in the presence of an absolutely brilliant teacher. And so I learned many things from him, but I learned because I wanted to know. And that's why anyone who really wants to know, the Bible says, knock and it will be open. Seek and you will find. Ask and it will be given. Right. And then the scripture says, my people are dying from a lack of knowledge. I've lived a very difficult life, all of my life, fighting against the system to try and educate both myself, my family, and the world around me. Right. And so at this late date now in my life, I'm just trying to stay alive and do the best I can to help my fellow man wake up, because it's a wake-up time. The world we're living in is moving fast and furious toward some terrible catastrophe, which is going to ultimately happen on the earth. And we know about the great catastrophes in the ancient world, the great flood of Noah's day in the Bible, and the great, all of the great collapses of civilizations and all the horrible things that have happened on the earth. One of them was when Mars and the earth came too close to each other, and there was an electrical shock which caused the what do you call it, that canyon, the Grand Canyon. People don't know that about the Grand Canyon, why we have a Grand Canyon. Most people don't know that the only reason we have rain is because of meteorites. Did you know that the only reason you have rain is because of meteorites? If you didn't have meteorites, you wouldn't have rain. So many people just do not know how the world we live in works. I have been in the company of all kinds of strange and wonderful, brilliant people. who are scientists, philosophers, astronomers, astronauts, all kinds of people, from the very highest to the very lowest. I've been in the company of extraordinarily bad people, very brilliant people. I've heard all the stories from all corners of the world, and there's a lot of things I can never tell you that I would love to have the world of mankind know before I leave the world. But some of the things I could say to you would be appalling to you, but it would also probably get me killed, and the people I would tell you about, that would get them in trouble too. So there's certain things I can't tell you about the world you live in. I wish I could, because I could tell you some things that would turn your hair white. On the American dollar bill, on the back of the $1 bill, you will see on the right-hand side of the back side, you will see an eagle with his 2 wings, and above the eagle are 13 stars, but the 13 stars together, all 13 together, they create what we call the Star of David. But very few people have ever wondered, why is the Star of David on the presidential seal of the United States, when we know that the Star of David was not called the Star of David? In the Bible, it's called the Star of Saturn. In the reference works, if you go to encyclopedias and do some homework and go to an encyclopedia in a library, and you will see the star that we call the Star of David is a 6-pointed star. Right. It's a triangle and 2 triangles interlaced, one triangle pointing one way and one triangle pointing down, and the 2 triangles make 6 points. And it's called the 6-pointed star, or the Star of David. No, it's the Star of Saturn. Saturn, the star, the planet with the rings. Go back into the encyclopedia and look up Star of Saturn. And then you will find, the Star of Saturn is a 6-pointed star. Well, 6 in Latin is called a hexagram. A hex is 6. And so therefore today we have a hexagram on the American dollar bill above the eagle's head on the back of the dollar bill, and it's a 6-pointed star where it's made up of 13 stars. And why 13? Because they were the 13 original colonies? No, not really. Because the planet Saturn plays into the history of the United States. It was founded according to the founding fathers, and according to the newspaper items and newspaper articles and magazine articles in the 18th and 19th century, especially in the 1770s and 1780s when America was being founded. They had huge articles in the newspapers about the United States of America is the reestablishment of the Saturnian system of government on the earth, devoted to the worship of the planet Saturn. That's what the articles talk about. I've got all kinds of newspaper clippings and magazine clippings from the 1770s talking about the planet Saturn is the guiding god of the United States. And it was the guiding light of the Roman Empire. And the symbol for Saturn, well, they had 2 major symbols for the planet Saturn, or the god Saturn. One was a black square, and one was the hexagram, the 6-pointed star. So today, we call the 6-pointed star a hexagram. And so we now know that this whole subject of Hollywood movie, the Lord of the Rings, is actually the worship of the Jewish god Saturn. And this is why Saturn in the old Phoenician Canaanite language, the word for the planet, we call it Saturn. But the way it was spelled in the old Canaanite language was Sabbath, S-H-A-B-B-A-T-H. Shabbat, S-H-A-B-B-A-T-H. Shabbat was the planet Saturn. And so today, if you're going to worship the planet Saturn, Lord of the Rings, you do it on a day called the Sabbath. So therefore, the Sabbath is nothing more than the worship of Shabbat. And Shabbat is the Babylonian word for, an Assyrian word for, the planet Saturn, the six-pointed star, the one who puts the hex on you. Wake up. I think it's interesting that the five-pointed star has been called the flame, what do they call it? The flaming star.
Right.
There was, and Elvis Presley even made a movie about it many years ago. Can't remember the name of the movie. Something about the flaming star. And it was a five-pointed star, which is all part of an esoteric understanding during the Middle Ages, when you have the man with the two legs, the two arms. I think it was Da Vinci that drew that. That's right. That's why Manly P. Hall wrote a whole book called Man is the Measure of the Universe. Period. The man, his body, a normal man's body, is represented by the whole universe. The whole understanding, the deep understanding of the great wizards and the great minds of the ancient world understood that the human body represents that which is above is so below. The pyramid on the dollar bill is not the capstone, which is the top triangle on the dollar bill, is called the capstone, or the chief cornerstone. And Christians say Jesus is the cornerstone of the church. No, Jesus is not the cornerstone of the church. There are a lot of churches called the Cornerstone Church, but they got it wrong, because the Christians have no idea what that word cornerstone means. It's a corner of a building. It's a cornerstone. And it's the first block, it's the first brick, first stone you lay, and then depending on how that one is laid out, once you draw straight lines from it, that's the cornerstone of a church. Well, Jesus is not the cornerstone of the church. The Bible doesn't say that. It says twice in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. Jesus in the New Testament is referred to as the chief, C-H-I-E-F, chief cornerstone that the builders rejected. But in the Old Testament, and I think it's in the book of Isaiah, one place, the Messiah is referred to as the chief cornerstone, not cornerstone, chief, C-H-I-E-F. Don't forget it. Chief cornerstone. And the chief cornerstone in the Hebrew theology, in the Hebrew Bible, if you take that word for chief cornerstone in Hebrew and go to a Bible dictionary and look it up, it will tell you the chief cornerstone was a symbol for Messiah. And the symbol for the Messiah was a chief cornerstone, and it will tell you that's a triangle that sits on top of a pyramid. But it's not connected to the pyramid because it's above the pyramid. The pyramid represents the body of mankind. And that's why it's called a pyramid. Pyramid. Pyramid comes from two words. Pyra. P-Y-R-A. Pyra. Pyra is a fire, like pyromaniac, pyrotech. Pyra, P-Y-R-A, is a fire. And mid, M-I-D, is the middle. And so a pyramid means fire in the middle. Why? Because the fire of sexual generation is in the middle of the human body. It's a pyramid, fire in the middle. Get it? And once you understand that the fire in the middle is the creation of human life for the whole universe, between male and female, that causes humans to be here, is the fire in the middle, or the pyramid. Right. And that the chief cornerstone is the ultimate power that decides the ultimate destiny of the pyramid. But it doesn't touch the pyramid because it's above it. And so that's why it's called the chief cornerstone, and Jesus is connected to the chief cornerstone because he is the pyramid. And it's a very ancient story, a very fascinating when you get into it and see how the pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Egypt, is connected directly to Stonehenge. Stonehenge is the magic circle of stones. And if you draw a line straight from the back of the pyramid straight through the front door and draw a straight line, a laser line across the world, it will cross the Great Pyramid in Giza. And so that's why in the book of Isaiah it says in Isaiah 19:19 that there was a pyramid in the middle of Egypt, and God put it there. And it said, "This is wonderful. It's God's work." I can't remember exactly the scripture, but it's Isaiah 19:19 talks about the pyramid. So just keep in mind when you go to public buildings, in restaurants and hotels and whatever, big public buildings, you will always see the men's room is always a triangle. And the women's room is always a circle. The circle represents the Stonehenge, the female. And the triangle on the men's restroom in public buildings represents the fire in the middle, men. And the fire in the middle is in the middle of the human body. So you need to understand the dark secrets that's been hidden from you by the world's religions. They know all about the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill and all of the dark sexual stuff that's going on today around the world. You really need to wake up and find out what the real truth is before you die. It would be interesting for you to find out what you don't know about the world you live in.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what I've been trying to do, and that's why I have lost everything I own. I've lost everything. I have zero, nothing. Why? Because I have sought all my life for one thing only, wisdom. Knowledge. Where do things come from? Why do we believe what we believe? What do they really mean, and where is it really found, and who started these different belief systems and who paid for them, and where did the churches come from, and where did these holy books come from? I'm telling you, eventually, if you did what I did, you would find yourself broke and homeless with nothing, because I love searching for wisdom and knowledge and understanding, and I got what I wanted. I paid a hell of a price, but I got what I wanted. I wanted to know what all of this stuff is all about. Well, now I know, and I sit by myself in one room, broke with nothing, but at least I got what I wanted. And now I'd like to help other people before I leave here to understand the world you live in. It's not what you think it is.